Sarah was not like the other women people usually noticed in the city. She was a kind girl with a soft heart, but her body was heavier than most. Since childhood, people had laughed at her, called her names, and sometimes even ignored her completely. She learned to hide her tears and pretend she was strong, but inside her heart, she always wished that one day someone would look beyond her weight and see her true soul. She worked in a small cafe, serving coffee and snacks to busy people who never even remembered her face. Customers came and went, but no one ever stopped to ask how she was doing. At night, when the cafe lights went off and the city turned quiet, Sarah would walk home alone and write in her diary. Her diary was her best friend. She filled its pages with dreams about love, about a man who would not care about her body, who would see her laughter, her kindness, and her heart. She dreamed of a prince who would love her as she was. In another part of the city lived Daniel. He was the exact opposite of Sarah. Handsome, tall, and rich, Daniel was the man every girl wanted. Expensive cars, big parties, and luxury clothes, he had it all. But Daniel was also proud and arrogant. He believed money and charm could get him anything he wanted. Girls followed him, and he enjoyed breaking hearts because, to him, feelings were nothing more than a game. One night, Daniel sat with his friends in a golden-lit club. The music was loud, and laughter filled the air. His friends teased him, saying he was too sure of himself. Daniel smirked and said, "I can make any woman fall for me, even if she is not my type. I can even marry her, and she will still believe my love." His words were filled with pride, and his friends leaned closer with wicked smiles. They wanted to test his arrogance. One of them pointed outside the window. Sarah was walking home with her bag after finishing her cafe shift. Her steps were slow, and her shoulders a little bent, but her face carried a quiet innocence. The men laughed. "Huh! You think you can marry her? She is nothing like the women you date." Daniel glanced at her and gave a half smile. Without hesitation, he accepted the challenge. "Just wait," he said confidently. "I will not only make her believe in me, but I will also marry her. And then you will see how easy it is." The bet was made that night, and the game began. The next morning, Sarah was cleaning tables in the cafe when she noticed a man standing at the counter. It was Daniel. At first, she thought he was lost because rich men like him never came to this small cafe. But Daniel smiled at her as if she was the only person in the room. He ordered coffee, but instead of leaving, he stayed. He asked her name, complimented her smile, and made small jokes. Sarah did not know how to react. Nobody had ever given her this kind of attention before. For the next few days, Daniel kept visiting. Sometimes he brought flowers, sometimes chocolates, sometimes just his charming smile. Sarah was confused but also excited. She told herself not to believe it, but her heart beat faster whenever he entered the cafe. He started walking with her when she went home, carrying her bag and asking about her life. He told her she was special, different from all the other women. For Sarah, who had spent her whole life being ignored, these words felt like magic. One evening, Sarah wrote in her diary, "For the first time, I feel like someone sees me. Maybe my dream prince has finally come." She hugged her diary with happy tears. But what Sarah did not know was the truth. Behind Daniel's sweet words and gentle actions, there was a cruel bet. Every time he looked at her with fake love, his friends laughed behind closed doors, waiting to see how far he would go. Sarah, innocent and pure, was falling in love, while Daniel was only playing a game. The audience can feel her happiness, but also the sadness hiding in the shadows. Because one question now hangs in the air. Will Daniel really go as far as to marry Sarah just to win a bet? Or will something unexpected happen along the way? The story had just begun, but already the hearts of those watching were pulled into Sarah's world. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's life slowly began to change. For years she had lived in silence, walking with her head down, but now she walked with a spark in her eyes. Daniel's attention gave her confidence. She laughed more, dressed a little better, and even sang softly while working in the cafe. Customers who once ignored her began to notice her cheerful energy. To Sarah, this new life felt like a dream, and Daniel was the reason behind it. Daniel, on the other hand, continued his act perfectly. Every morning, he sent her good morning texts. Every evening, he either called her or came to see her. He showered her with compliments, telling her she was beautiful in ways no one else could see. He took her to restaurants she had never dared to enter before, pulled out chairs for her, and treated her like she was the most important woman in the world. Sarah's heart was melting more each day, while Daniel's friends laughed in the background, waiting for the final moment of his cruel bet. One night, after dinner, Daniel took Sarah for a walk by the riverside. The lights reflected on the water, and Sarah felt nervous but happy. Daniel held her hand and looked into her eyes. "Sarah," he said softly, "you are not like anyone else. You make me feel calm, you make me feel real. I want to spend my life with you." Sarah froze. She could not believe what she had just heard. Was this really happening? The rich and handsome Daniel was asking her to be with him forever. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. Daniel pulled out a ring, shiny and expensive, and slipped it on her finger. Sarah hugged him tightly, believing her dream had finally come true. In her diary that night, she wrote, "I am the luckiest woman in the world. He loves me. He really loves me." But Daniel's reality was far darker. His friends had already started preparing for the wedding as if it was a big joke. They whispered behind closed doors, mocking Sarah's size, calling her names, and laughing about how shocking the marriage would look. Daniel pretended not to care, but in his heart, the bet was still alive. He wanted to prove his pride and win. Meanwhile, Sarah began preparing for her wedding with innocent excitement. She went shopping with her small savings, bought a simple but beautiful dress, and told her co-workers at the cafe. Some of them smiled politely, but behind her back, whispers began. "Do you really think he loves her? Why would a millionaire marry her?" The cruel words reached Sarah's ears, but she pushed them aside. She trusted Daniel, and she believed in love. Her parents, who had always worried about her future, were shocked too. At first, they thought Daniel might be joking, but when he visited their house in his expensive car, bringing gifts and speaking politely, their doubts faded. He convinced everyone with his charming manners. Even Sarah's mother, who had always prayed for her daughter to find someone kind, blessed him with a smile. The wedding day finally arrived. The hall was decorated beautifully, and people gathered with curiosity. Some came to bless the couple, while others came just to see the unusual sight of a rich, handsome man marrying a heavy, ordinary woman. Cameras flashed, whispers spread, and Sarah stood at the center in her simple white dress, glowing with happiness. Daniel entered in his black suit, looking like a prince. He smiled confidently, but inside, his mind replayed the bet. His friends were watching from the crowd, waiting for him to complete the game. He looked at Sarah, who stood with pure love in her eyes, and for a brief second, something inside him felt strange. When the vows were spoken and the rings exchanged, Sarah's voice trembled with emotion. "I promise to love you with all my heart," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. Daniel repeated his words smoothly, but in that moment, he noticed how genuine she was. Her love was real. She believed every word she spoke, while his words were nothing but lies. For the first time, Daniel felt a slight heaviness in his chest. The wedding ended, and people clapped, but the whispers did not stop. Some called it true love, others called it a mistake. Sarah, however, ignored the world. For her, this was the happiest day of her life. She walked out holding Daniel's hand, dreaming of a future filled with love, unaware that everything was built on a cruel bet. But deep inside Daniel's heart, an uncomfortable feeling had begun to grow. His friends cheered, patting his back for winning the challenge, but when he looked at Sarah's bright smile, a small voice inside whispered, "What have you done?" The story was no longer just a game. Something unexpected had started to stir in Daniel's heart. After the wedding, Sarah's life felt like a fairy tale. She moved into Daniel's grand mansion, a place she had never imagined living in. The house was so big that her small footsteps echoed across the marble floors. Expensive chandeliers hung above her head, and servants bowed politely whenever she passed. To Sarah, it felt like a dream she never wanted to wake up from. She tried her best to become a perfect wife. She woke up early to prepare breakfast, even though the servants were there. She decorated Daniel's room with flowers, left sweet notes for him, and even learned to cook his favorite dishes. Every time she looked at him, her heart filled with love and gratitude. She truly believed she had found the man of her destiny. But for Daniel, things were different. At first, he continued playing his role smoothly. He held her hand in public, smiled at her, and pretended to be the perfect husband. But when he was alone with his friends, he laughed about the bet. They teased him, saying he had shocked the whole city. For them, Sarah was nothing but entertainment, and Daniel was the winner of their cruel game. Still, something strange began to happen. Whenever Daniel looked at Sarah's innocent eyes, he felt a small pinch in his heart. She was so genuine, so pure, so trusting. She never doubted him, never questioned his love. Instead, she looked at him like he was her whole world. Slowly, Daniel started feeling uneasy. His pride had brought her into his life, but her kindness was quietly shaking the walls of his arrogance. Sarah, unaware of the truth, tried harder every day. She learned which tea Daniel liked in the morning, ironed his shirts with care, and welcomed him home with a smile even when he returned late from parties. She told herself that love meant patience and sacrifice, and she was ready to give everything. In her diary, she wrote, "I may not be perfect, but I will love him perfectly." But the outside world was not kind. At charity events and parties, Sarah noticed the whispers, the hidden laughs, and the stares. Some women openly mocked her behind their glasses of wine. Why would he marry her? She doesn't fit here, they said. Sarah pretended not to hear, but deep inside, the words cut her heart. Still, when she looked at Daniel, she found strength. He chose me, she told herself. That is enough. One evening, after party, Sarah overheard a conversation that made her heart tremble. Daniel's friends were laughing loudly in the garden while Daniel was inside. "He really did it," one of them said. "Can you believe he married her just for the bet? What a legend." They clapped and laughed, not knowing Sarah was standing near the door, frozen. Her world shattered in a second. The love she had believed in, the marriage she had dreamed of, the man she had trusted, it all felt like a cruel lie. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she quietly walked back into her room. She sat on the bed, holding the ring on her finger, her hands shaking. "Was I just a joke?" she whispered to herself. That night, Sarah could not sleep. She looked at Daniel when he entered the room, smiling as if nothing was wrong. Her heart wanted to ask him, to scream, to demand the truth. But another part of her stayed silent, afraid of hearing the answer. She smiled weakly, turned her face away, and cried into her pillow. Daniel noticed her sadness, but he told himself it was nothing. Yet deep inside, guilt was beginning to grow. He remembered her trembling voice during the wedding vows, her tears of happiness, and the way she looked at him as if he was her entire world. He had won the bet, but for the first time, victory felt empty. The next morning, Sarah wore a smile and behaved as if everything was normal, but her heart was broken. She continued her duties, but in her diary, she wrote with shaking hands, "If love was a game to him, then I was the prize he laughed at. But why does my heart still love him?" The tension in the mansion grew quietly. Daniel started noticing her silence, the way she avoided his eyes, the way her laughter had disappeared. And although he could not admit it yet, he began to miss her smile. Something inside him whispered that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. The game that began as a cruel bet was now turning into something dangerous, for Sarah's heart and for Daniel's conscience. Sarah's world had changed ever since she overheard Daniel's friends laughing about the cruel bet. Every smile she once gave him now felt heavy, every word of love she once believed in now sounded false inside her heart. She tried to hide her pain, but deep inside, her soul was breaking. She still did her duties as a wife. She still prepared breakfast, still waited for him in the evenings, and still tried to keep the house warm with her love. But her eyes told another story, silent tears, sleepless nights, and endless questions she was too afraid to ask. Daniel noticed her silence, but he ignored it at first, thinking she would be fine. Yet something in her quiet behavior made him restless. One evening, Sarah finally gathered the courage to ask. She waited until Daniel came home from another late-night party. He looked tired, but before he could say anything, she softly asked, "Daniel, tell me, why did you marry me?" The question shocked him. For the first time, he could not reply instantly. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes were searching for the truth, and his silence was enough to confirm her worst fears. Her tears started falling, and she whispered, So it's true, everything was just a bet. Daniel froze. He wanted to deny it, but the guilt in his chest was too heavy. He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. That silence broke Sarah completely. She let out a painful cry, the kind of cry that comes from a heart torn apart. I gave you my love, my trust, my soul, and for you, I was only a joke. Her words cut Daniel deeper than he expected. For the first time in his life, he felt ashamed of himself. He had broken many hearts before, but Sarah's pain felt different. Her tears burned his conscience. He reached out to hold her hand, but she pulled it away. Sarah spent the night sitting near the window, staring at the dark sky. She felt like her world had collapsed. The man she thought was her dream had turned out to be her nightmare. In her diary, she wrote with trembling hands, I thought I found love, but I was only a story for his friends to laugh at. I will never forgive myself for believing in him. The next morning, Sarah made a decision. She packed her small bag, took off the expensive ring, and placed it on the table. When Daniel woke up, he saw her standing at the door with tears in her eyes. I cannot stay in a house built on lies, she said in a broken voice. You may have won your bet, Daniel, but you have lost something far greater, my love. Daniel panicked. For the first time, fear entered his heart. He rushed towards her. Sarah, please, listen. I didn't mean to hurt you. At first, it was a bet, yes, but, his voice cracked. But now, it feels different. I don't know when it happened, but I can't see you walking away. Sarah looked at him with disbelief. You can't love someone after destroying their soul, she said firmly. You played with my heart, Daniel. And now I have nothing left to give you. With those words, she walked out of the mansion, leaving him standing in silence. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt truly alone. His friends, who once laughed and cheered for him, suddenly seemed meaningless. The big house, the expensive cars, the endless money, none of it gave him peace. The image of Sarah's broken face haunted him every second. He tried to call her, but she didn't answer. He went to the cafe where she once worked, but she wasn't there. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's life felt empty. He realized the truth too late. What started as a bet had turned into real love, but by the time he understood it, Sarah was already gone. On the other side, Sarah was trying to rebuild her life. She rented a small room in another part of the city and returned to working quietly. Her smile was gone, her laughter stolen, but she told herself she would heal one day. She avoided the places that reminded her of Daniel and focused on surviving each day. But deep inside, her heart still carried his name. No matter how much she tried to erase him, his memory refused to leave. She hated him for betraying her, yet a small part of her still longed for the man she believed he could be. That conflict kept her awake at night, making her tears fall silently on her pillow. Meanwhile, Daniel's heart was no longer the same. He realized money and pride could never give him happiness. Only Sarah's love had made his life meaningful, and now that love was gone. He stood by the riverside one night, the same place where he had proposed to her as part of his cruel act. The reflection of water reminded him of her tears. For the first time, Daniel fell on his knees, crying like a child, whispering to the wind, Sarah, I am sorry. I don't deserve you, but I love you. The cruel bet had finally destroyed both their hearts, but it also planted something unexpected inside Daniel, a true love, born too late. Weeks passed, but Daniel could not forget Sarah. His mansion felt empty, his parties felt useless, and his expensive life no longer gave him joy. He sat in his office staring at files but could not focus. Every corner of his house reminded him of her smile, the way she decorated the room with flowers, the way she waited at the door when he came home, the way she whispered his name with love. Now, silence filled the house, and that silence was unbearable. Daniel finally realized the truth. He had destroyed the only person who ever loved him sincerely. His friends, who once laughed with him, had disappeared. They moved on with their own lives, but he was left with guilt. One evening, he looked at himself in the mirror and whispered, I am the loser, not her. She gave me real love, and I gave her pain. For the first time, he admitted to himself that his heart belonged to Sarah. On the other side, Sarah tried to rebuild her broken life. She worked in a small bookstore now, away from the cafe, away from the mansion, away from everything that reminded her of Daniel. She spent her days among books, quietly avoiding questions about her past. People saw her as a strong woman, but inside, she was still wounded. At night, she cried silently, hugging her diary, but she never allowed anyone to see her pain. She promised herself she would never trust Daniel again, no matter what. One rainy evening, fate brought them face to face again. Sarah was walking home with her umbrella when she saw Daniel standing outside the bookstore, completely drenched in the rain. He looked thinner, tired, and nothing like the proud millionaire she once knew. For a moment, Sarah's heart stopped. She wanted to turn away, but his voice reached her. "Sarah," he said softly, his eyes filled with desperation. "Please, listen to me once." Sarah froze but stayed silent. Daniel stepped closer, his voice trembling. "I was a fool. Yes, it started as a bet. Yes, I hurt you. But somewhere along the way, everything changed. I fell in love with you, real love, the kind I never believed in before. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but without you, I am empty." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was firm. "Do you know what you took from me, Daniel? You didn't just break my heart, you broke my trust, my dignity, my soul. Love is not a game. Marriage is not a joke. You turned my life into humiliation." Her words were sharp, and each one stabbed Daniel like a knife. Daniel fell to his knees on the wet ground, his hands shaking. "I know," he whispered. "I know I destroyed everything. But Sarah, I swear on my life, if you give me one chance, I will spend every day proving my love to you. I don't want your pity. I just want your forgiveness, even if you never come back to me." The rain poured heavily, and Sarah looked at him, broken and helpless. A part of her heart wanted to believe him. Another part reminded her of the pain he caused. She closed her eyes, remembering every tear she had cried, and then remembering every smile he once gave her. Her heart was torn in two. After a long silence, Sarah spoke softly. "Daniel, love is not about words, it's about actions. If you truly love me now, then prove it. Not in one day, not in 1 week, but in the way you live your life. Show me that you are no longer the man who played with hearts." Daniel nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "I will, Sarah. Even if it takes my whole life, I will prove it." Sarah turned away, walking slowly into the rain. She did not forgive him yet, but she also did not close the door completely. Daniel watched her go, his heart heavy but also filled with a new determination. For the first time, he understood that love was not about winning a bet, it was about losing your pride, your ego, and fighting for someone's trust. Days turned into months. Daniel changed his ways completely. He stopped attending useless parties, distanced himself from his cruel friends, and started helping people quietly. He donated to orphanages, funded schools, and lived a simpler life. Every step he took, he thought of Sarah. He never pressured her, never forced her back, but every now and then, she heard about the man he was becoming. One morning, Sarah visited the riverside, the same place where he had once proposed to her as part of a lie. She stood there, thinking about the past. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Daniel was standing behind her, holding no flowers, no gifts, just his honest eyes. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness," he said gently. "I am here to thank you. Because of you, I found out what love truly means. Even if you never come back, I will always love you." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. She saw no arrogance, no pride, no lies. Only a man who had finally understood her worth. Her heart softened. With trembling lips, she whispered, "Maybe, love deserves one last chance." Daniel's eyes widened, and tears of relief rolled down his cheeks. He didn't hug her, he didn't rush. He simply stood there, letting her words sink into his soul. For the first time, their story was not about a cruel bet. It was about real love, love that survived pain, betrayal, and regret. And as the wind blew softly by the riverside, Sarah finally smiled again.